"Fire! Fire!" I could have yelled that and it would have been much more effective, but people outside would have spilled their coffee. I didn't want to do that. From the time I was a little boy, I've been fascinated by fire. Madam Contest Chair, honored dignitaries, honored guests, and fellow Toastmasters, and all those who have ever loved the glow of a candlelight. From when I was a little boy, my mom hired a smoker to be my babysitter. It fascinated me when she took her matchbook, opened the cover, ripped off a match, and struck it against the black stripe. I wasn't so much interested in the cigarette, but the match. If I could only find a way to do that. So one day, when everybody was supposed to be napping, I snuck to the place where I knew she kept her matches in a desk drawer. I opened the drawer, pulled out the match book, and began trying to strike the match. It didn't work. So I tried again, and finally, success. Fire. Cool. Hot, hot, hot. I threw the match into an open drawer full of papers, and whoosh, fire, fire. That day, I found out how much destruction a fire could cause, how much harm a fire could be, as that desk was burnt up and the wall behind the desk. But that didn't cause as much harm as the harm to my behind. As much as I found out how much harm a fire could cause, I later on found out how much help a fire could be. I grew up in a house where we had 2 bedrooms upstairs, and one of them I had to share with my sister. But I was starting to get to the age where I needed more privacy. In the basement, there was a wood stove that provided central heating throughout the whole house. And my dad had the brilliant idea that I could have a room in the basement if I would do the chore of lighting the fire every morning. My mom was concerned. Is he old enough to be doing that now? My dad said, "Don't worry, dear. Remember that desk a few years ago? He needs an outlet for his inner arsonist." So I would get up in the morning, get out of bed, and freeze as I got to the stove to begin the fire each morning. I knew Dad didn't want me to build the fire just because he wanted an outlet for my inner arsonist. He wanted to give me a job where I had to be cold in the morning. But when I got done, I went upstairs and saw something amazing. Around the main register, just above the furnace, where the most heat came out in the morning, there stood my sister and my mom and my dad, all huddled around the register. That same element of fire that caused me to go screaming to my babysitter was bringing my family together each morning for heat and comfort. I saw this same thing happen later in life as we would have our homecoming, and there would be a big bonfire and the whole high school would gather around the bonfire. Or at the end of the day, in my Boy Scout troop, as we would gather around the campfire and share stories and our passions in life. And as we shared those stories of passion, I began to understand that those passions that we were sharing had the same danger as fire. They could be great help to people as we shared them, but they could also be of great harm if they were pursued in the wrong way. This spring, there have been wildfires blowing through my home state of Kansas, and Oklahoma and western Texas. A tiny spark catches on a piece of grass, and pretty soon that smoldering piece of grass is hit by the West Texas wind or the Kansas wind blowing across the prairies, and pretty soon there's an inferno rolling across the plains, taking out ranches and barns and farms and even small towns as people rush to get out of the way. In the same way, our passions, if they're pursued with ourself in mind, can cause people to rush to get out of the way because they're afraid of getting burned by our passion. But if we use our passion in a way that focuses to help other people, if we, with our passions, focus on relationships with others and helping others, rather than focusing on what we can get out of it for ourselves, our passions can be of great help, just like the bonfire at homecoming or the campfire that we sat around when I was a Boy Scout, or that heat register that my family huddled around at night. So what about you? Does your passion cause people to go, fire? Or, fire? Madam Contest Chair.